That does make me chuckle a little bit.
I'm going to call this meeting to order. If you would, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Benton.
Here.
Denham. Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight's agenda, we're going to get an update on segments 1 and 2 of our West 76 Country Boulevard presentation by Great River Engineering. Keith Francis, you're on deck.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. What we're going to do this afternoon is a representative of Great River Engineering, Jeremy Jackson's here to give you all an update on some of the concept drawings and what's been happening on the Highway 76 project, basically from Shepherd of the Hills to the Expressway to the Ferris wheel area. That segment there, that's segments 1 and 2. So without further ado, I'll let Jeremy come up here and take over and give you all a whirl. Thanks.
Jerry?
Thank you. It's so nice to be here this evening. I am excited about this project, and our team is really excited about this project. We're going to take you on a little journey. For those of you who were not able to join us at the charrette, hopefully I can paint this picture for you and give you a little bit of an update and a progress update as well. Whoops, there we go. My bad. Got it, thanks. So just as a reminder, the project team, obviously the City of Branson and also the 76 Entertainment Community Improvement District are our guides for this journey. The 76 Design Collective is made up of 3 entities. Great River Engineering, and that's, I'm the project manager for the project representing Great River and the 76 Design Collective. Vireo Landscape Architects out of Kansas City, Missouri, and H Design Group, an architecture firm in Springfield. When we began this process, we went through a fairly significant inventory and analysis of the 1-mile corridor from the Ferris wheel all the way to Shepherd of the Hills Expressway, or Parkway, excuse me. And when we did that, we looked at the existing conditions in minute detail, frankly. We looked at the zoning in the area, the right-of-way, driveway consolidation and access management, and we also looked at opportunities and constraints. One of the things that stood out to us was this idea of zoning and what we had in zoning. We did find that there were some conflicting regulations and some conflicting allowed uses and some non-conformance. And as a separate recommendation, we've been talking about the fact that an overlay district might work well for us for our corridor. We did an analysis of the right-of-way, and what we found was that we have not only some 60-foot right-of-way, but we also have 70-foot right-of-way, 75-foot right-of-way, 90, and actually a little more than 90-foot right-of-way in some areas. Now, while the constraints of a 60-foot right-of-way are very apparent, it's kind of narrow, it doesn't give us much room, we do have some areas where we have a little bit more space, and that's going to be good for us, we think. When we looked at the driveway analysis, initially, we identified those businesses that had 1, 2, and 3 or more entrances. And I might remind you that this corridor was a highway. It was a highway. And long ago, as a highway, it was imperative that people, they wanted those access points. But now that we're a city and we have a corridor where we're trying to encourage pedestrians to use the corridor for their, for a primary way of getting around, we really need to be careful about access points. We also know that we can increase the safety if we do some consolidating. So we're going to talk more about that. We identified a number of opportunities and constraints and presented these opportunities and constraints at the charrette, looking at things like we have engaged stakeholders. I mean, what a better opportunity, I don't really know. I mean, it's really great to have so many people that are so interested. We had between 57 and 60 people at the charrette, and I can tell you that's a lot of people to have at a charrette, but we really worked hard and we heard a lot of voices and we were able to distill that information relatively well. We also talked about constraints, and there are constraints here. We have some places where we don't have much space. We don't have sidewalks that are connected right now, so if you are a pedestrian and you're out there in the right-of-way, it's uncomfortable. You don't always have an opportunity to get where you want to go if you're on foot, and so we've got to fix that. We also have the zoning conflicts that we talked about, and while we're on a plateau, you know, on 76, the grades do fall off rather steeply as you get to the other side. So in our infrastructure review, we looked at reducing the number of driveways, and at the end of day one, we knew that we had an opportunity to potentially create more space and improved conditions for pedestrians, as well as safer conditions for those people that are traveling in vehicles. We knew that there were some short-term goals and some long-term goals, and the things that you can see here, this was our first day kind of summary up on the screen. We went through the day one review, and at the end, we also looked at some of the sketches and some of the information that we did some work in small groups, and we came out with some pretty good information. We looked at a lot of precedents in these days. We wanted to make sure that we put things in front of people so that we could gauge a reaction. Is this the direction that we need to be going? During lunch, we did a DOT survey. We had some design precedents that we took from the previous work that had been done, and we built on that, and we identified images that carried these themes, and we asked people to respond to those images with dots. We gave them a dot per board, and they voted, and you can kind of see where people landed as I move through these photos. Very clearly, nature was a theme, music is a theme. We know that we want dynamic streetscape elements, lots of interaction, lights and music. These things were all standout pieces of our precedent study. So that led us to some solution scenarios that we presented. The first day, we came at the end of the day and we said, we've got scenario one, and scenario one is staying within the right-of-way. Now remember, we have a lot of different right-of-way widths. We knew that if we put the road on a diet and we squeezed the road in, remember it was a highway, and so the lanes were very, very wide, and it was an old highway, which meant that the lanes were even wider. So knowing that, we could squeeze those lanes in so that they could be the same width as a lane on I-44 and still have 3 lanes, 1 in each direction and a center turn lane. We still gain about 8 to 10 feet within the right-of-way. If we stay within the right-of-way, this is the kind of thing that you might see. We would have 3 lanes of traffic, and potentially we would have sidewalks on both sides. One side might carry an 8-foot sidewalk, the other side would carry a 5-foot sidewalk. And potentially we would have some green space. It wouldn't be a lot different than what you see in segment 3 without having more space. If there are public-private partnerships, which is what we presented in scenario 2, we know we have more opportunities. So when people are interested in partnering with the city on this project for space, or they want to allow access, we can meander the sidewalk, we can create more interest, and we may be able to create a better, more livable space, a place where people can experience things. So plazas can happen, plantings can happen, lighting can happen. We can do those wow moments that we are all hoping for. And so scenario 1 and 2 were completely accepted by the group. We had a scenario 3, and we threw scenario 3 out. So we brought scenario 4 back the next day. And what scenario 4 sought to show here was that we could use the existing pavement area that we have, but shift the roadway one way or the other to maximize the space on one side or the other. And in doing that, we would have more available public space. In this scenario, you can see the public space that's identified is the area that still remains within that right-of-way, with a little bit of the 25-foot easement on the back side on the private property. In this same scenario 4, we examined what might happen if we had a bridge. We have a place within the roadway that was conducive with the grades, that we might actually be able to have an overhead grade-separated pedestrian passage, and that would be a bridge, like a pedestrian bridge. Although in our scenario, we really saw this as more of an overlook, taking advantage of creating these opportunities to see the Ozarks around, elevate people and get them up high and take a look. We knew that it needed more study, and that was something that we left the charrette with, was that we committed to actually doing a little bit more study on that. This is just another example of scenario 4 and a way that things might develop. We did land on some corridor branding. So the things that you see here were all things that were pulled from the DOT survey. These are all images that everybody liked. And you know, this is important work for us because it sets a tone for how we want to move forward. We know that music is so important to the city of Branson and to this project, and so looking at things maybe differently. How can we create music and nature? Neon, as we talked about at the charrette, Branson's not like every other place. You know, in some places, when you go in and you mention the word neon, people get freaked out. They say, no, not in my city. But in Branson, you get a nod in the other direction, and we recognize that. We think lighting is going to be extremely important. And an interactive streetscape with wow moments, little surprises, things that you discover along the way, whether they're small wayfinding elements or whether they're big iconic elements that you see from the vehicle and that you see as a pedestrian. So that takes us to where we are right now. So we go all the way back to driveways. It's important for us to examine what we have and what we can consolidate reasonably, because we don't want to take away access, but I do have to point out to you that we've got some really great access on the back side of many of these places. I think the city was wise in creating a street network that allowed for access to occur on the back side of these places. And so where we have those opportunities, we would, you know, we really want to encourage that folks explore that. On the other hand, we're not looking to take access away, but looking more to potentially share some drive accesses, line things up. And so what you see in gray are consolidated drives where we're trying to line the driveways up and improve those turning movements so that we're safer. Whenever we do that, we don't have cars that are turning every which way. It's a little bit more predictable. We can predict our pedestrian movements when they're crossing the driveways in this way as well. You can see that we shifted the dots that are in red are shifted or consolidated drives. take another look at this area. These are some more shifted or consolidated, and I can tell you that we've done another rendition since this one. I think it's an ongoing, design is iterative, and so we're going to continue to make changes, and we're listening now to, input that we're getting from the members, the stakeholder members, and so we know that we're making changes as we go. This is a point in time, certainly. So the theme, overarching theme, is volume, music, crescendo vibration, nature with water, wind in the Ozarks, and entertainment with play and gathering spaces and creating those experiences. When we look at the possibilities for the median opportunities that we have, we certainly recognize that we have more conversations to be had, but there are opportunities for us to do green space in the median, which could house, if you will, small trees, or an artful landscape, something that weaves through both on one side, through the median, to the other side. And so if you can imagine a ribbon, that's really what we're trying to convey here. In the sketch on the right-hand side, you can see how that movement might work, moving from one side of the right-of-way to the other. These are some precedence photos that we've landed on, and some things that we know, we can incorporate into, into the design, whether it be landscape or wayfinding or seating, always building on that idea of the ribbon weaving its way through. We want to use landscape and the land the very best way that we can. And so, it went away.
Yeah, there's a little screen button on there at the very bottom.
Yes.
Hit that one more time. Or I can fix it for you.
Hello.
Jared, that's our subtle way of saying your time's up.
I got it. I'd be happy to answer any questions. All that I was going to say on that last slide was that, we recognize how important the land is to us here and the Ozarks, and we know that there may be some really great opportunities for us to use the limited space that we have and use land and land form and lights in a creative way to form the space and define the space and create a buffer, if you will, between the traveling vehicles and the and the pedestrians. It's like magic.
Which slide were you on? Sorry.
The very end, I think. Sure. Awesome. We'll keep going. So, as we move on through these guys, there's this really great slide at the end, right here. And so the bottom left-hand image, I think, is really powerful to us because we heard a lot of discussion about how we really need to incorporate lighting into, whatever the design solutions are, music, lighting, energy. And we think that there's a very creative way for us to do that and create, and honor the Ozarks and honor the land and, also create buffers and some nice things like that. So we are currently in conceptual, refinement, if you will. We have a schematic design charrette on January 11th. And what we will do at that time is we'll bring the entire corridor, and we'll have some of the sketching that you see on the right-hand side of the screen for the entire corridor. And we'll start to really talk about what those things mean. In the meanwhile, we're continuing to work on utility coordination. We want to get those utilities underground, and that's a big endeavor. And so that coordination effort is ongoing every day. And We've just been working on some funding as well. We recognize that funding for this project is paramount to making it happen, and we want to look at any opportunity that there is to apply for and get any funding that's available to us that we're a good match for.
Jeremy, what's the time and location on the January 11th?
We're going to be in the same place at the Lodge on West 76 Country Boulevard, and we'll start at 9 a.m., just like we did before. It'll just be a one-day, so you won't leave. Once you get there, you're captured. We're locking the doors. You don't get to go out. We do want you to come if you have an opportunity. It will be very similar in format. We'll do a presentation to you of our work, of where we are in the corridor. We might point out some places that need a little bit of special input from you, and then we probably will break into small groups and then come back together so that we can share, so we can share our ideas. I can tell you that as a result of going through the funding application, I had to actually get my pencil out and make it very sharp, and I had to put some numbers down on paper. And, those numbers might be a little scary, but they're real. We open bids every month, and I'm trying to track the project costs as closely as I can. So I'm putting as much reality into the numbers that I bring to you. We can talk numbers. We did break the numbers down for some of the major elements, and it's a big project. We know that we want to make a big splash, and so we're going to do it right. Other questions?
Chair, I don't have a question. I have an observation. At the beginning of your talk, you mentioned listening. And my experience through sitting through these charrettes and with the stakeholders is the caliber of stakeholders that you have to work with is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to compliment you on how much you're listening to the stakeholders. It was very obvious to me that you were listening, you were providing a little guidance, but when you would listen and then take that and put it into an action step, I feel so good with the trajectory that we're on with this project.
Thank you. We are trying. I can tell you that we had a great opportunity today. I was able to be involved in a few stakeholder meetings today to kind of set the tone for how the independent stakeholder meetings need to go and the kind of information that they might need to hear. And we got great input. I mean, you're right. What an engaged group. I mean, I've done a lot of projects. It's been 30 years of my life doing design, and I can tell you this is the most engaged group I've ever had to work with. So I love it.
So we felt it was important for the board to get an update of where our 76 project is, include the board along some of the steps, so you can see not only the amount of work and time and effort that's going into this, obviously wanted to prevent at the very end saying, okay, board, here's where we're at. But let the board engage during the process. Is there any questions for Jerry? I know Gail's here. He'd be happy to answer any questions. He's the chairman of the 76 committee. Marshall?
So Jeremy, continuing on what the mayor was saying, the point that I've continued to make is about the music, and I definitely feel heard on that. I see just in the main thematic points that you've kind of taken what I've kind of been saying, and that's, originally there was a point in this project where there were a lot of disparate themes, and we came down to having Ozarks combined with music and kind of having that blend into this kind of incredible theme. I'm really happy to see that's kind of come back as the overarching theme, because I think that makes the most sense. And I'll just reiterate kind of to the board what I said at the design charrette. Music can be auditory and hearing music, but I think we need visual elements of music as well. Seeing the piano keys or seeing the things that represent the music notes, things that make Country Boulevard what it is, right? I continue to think that when we talk about walking up and down 76. You know, it's kind of a daunting task because it's not 5.5 miles. What's the distance of the district?
Well, it's a little over 5 miles.
A little over 5, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I continue to think that it's points of interest where, you know, obviously in front of the Ferris wheel over in that direction, people are going to walk there, right? I don't know if someone's going to start at IHOP and walk the entire distance, 4 miles, and then come back, right?
Right.
But I think if you had points where they park, get out, they'll walk here, and maybe you even designate those as a place of walking around. To me, that's much more realistic, I feel like, than kind of really even expending the money it would take to connect all the sidewalks. When is that really going to be the goal of someone? I mean, it's almost like a hiking project if you went from 4 miles and then 4, you know, that kind of thing, right? So I feel like the points of interest are really interesting. And then the only other thing I'll say to the board, because this has been brought up, is that the public-private partnership side of it, you know, the Duttons are here and they're working on kind of a new facade for their theater. And what I heard then and what I would like to see is just let's work with them as best as we possibly can to make that as easy a process as we can make it, because the more we have that, the more they can make their building look incredible, the better it's going to help our project and the whole thing going forward. So that's some of my comments. I appreciate your listening ear, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. If I could, I will say that it was very apparent, you know, at the charrette, one of the recommendations that we made was that the Dutton, you know, project, if you will, be kind of a pilot, but we can't necessarily impact that, but it's been very apparent that there's lots of great progress and lots of great partnership with the city, and so it looks like it's making a lot of headway. It looks good.
Something else I wanted to mention to the board is we've had a few discussions about an zoning overlay for the 76 corridor. And just generally speaking, we all know that the 76, the CID tax is the funds that are supporting all of this work. So a couple questions came up, and one is, what would be the temperament of this board, along with our P&Z, to have an overlay of the district and put in some guidelines today that as developments are built along 76, that they conform with the overall mindset of what we're wanting. And to get into economics a little bit, encourage the commercial retail users to be on that corridor versus lodging or other uses that won't be contributing funds into this. So to try to have just an overlay of the complementary uses, both physically for the consumer and economically. So that'll be something that this board will be addressing in the few months ahead of us. And that's really just to set the groundwork for 10, 20 years down the road.
Absolutely. It's my understanding that there are, you know, there's a lot of energy in the corridor. There's a lot of interest in the corridor, and, you know, not only from existing businesses, but from, you know, prospective, you know, businesses as well. And I think that, you know, everyone is watching this process so that they can get a better handle on what it's really going to be. I think we're setting that tone pretty clearly now. So I think it's a good time to consider, you know, what the overlay might do and how it can work for you.
Any other questions from the board? Gail, do you want to add anything? I was going to say, has Gail ever been asked? He says, no, I'm good.
Well, just two things. Just compliments that, number one, I appreciate Larry and Clay being on the board and being so supportive. I appreciate the city being supportive. You know, in a meeting that we had with Sheila, and truly, that is the opportunity for inspiration for this project. Okay, that's what it is. And we have a timing problem. We're trying to work that out. But it's gratifying to hear Keith in that room go, the city's going to do everything we can to make it successful. That's the right attitude. And what I hope is the city will learn from that, because when we go into these meetings with what can we do instead of what all the problems are, you know, my mother used to say, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And so I'm excited about what we're doing. And maybe this, I hope this is okay, but I think we are way better off than we've been in the past on this particular project. So I'm just appreciative of the staff. And I think the other thing is, when you talk about overlay, you know, Michael Woods said, there's a whole bunch of people looking at what's going on. They want to see what's going on because they want to do some things on 76. Well, here's the rub. The rub is that we'd love to tell them as they develop that they have a setback, that they need to put in irrigation, they need to put in a certain kind of sidewalk and all this stuff, and we need to do a duck bank in front of their business. And then, you know, there's some sort of a reimbursement agreement that has to happen, and that will cost us, because they have to then go out and get 3 bids, and they have to do prevailing wage and all of the rigmarole that the city normally has to go through that we don't. And I think you got to think about the fact that when Chuck O'Day had the opportunity to do some of that, he decided no, because it was too much, and it might cost the city more than if we just tear out what they do and do it right when we get there. And we got to figure that out. But I just wanted to share my appreciation. There's going to be some speed bumps, okay? But we have, as he said, we have huge expertise on our board. I'm just humbled to be on that board with them and Ann and Jeremy to be able to get us to the right answer. And I think we're going to see some great things. Now, Marshall, to your point, all of that sounds really good, but eventually we got to write a check. Okay? And so some of it's going to get cut out. I mean, that's the way it is. That's why we value engineer. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Gil. Any questions, comments from anybody in the audience? Nope. We're good?
The bridge idea, how far along, I mean, is that something y'all are pretty,
We did a,
Would you,
I mean, that's cool.
would you pull your mic?
we actually looked at, oh, sorry,
you.
thank you. We actually did look at the bridge. We evaluated a tower, we evaluated the bridge in this way, this elevated pedestrian overlook. And I can tell you that the decision was made that that was not something that would be, you know, necessarily worth the budgeted monies at this time. It is always an option. We've got this information. We know what we can do and where we can do it. But at this moment, we're not. We did evaluate it though, and we looked at the views and everything, but.
So that's a financial thing, or just didn't think that was the?
We knew that at the end of the day, to put a grade-separated pedestrian overpass or an overlook, because it would be both, we know that. We probably didn't want to do the ramps. That would make it ADA accessible, so we would have to do elevators, one on each side. And
Cha-ching.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and, I mean, you said it. And the thing is, here's what I'll tell you, is that this is a big project, and it doesn't mean that you can't add things as they make sense at some point. But what I'll tell you is that probably to do this right, we were in the $3 million to $4 million just for that structure. And we know that we do have a budget, even though we're not, you know, solid on exactly what those numbers are, that would be a really big bite.
Yeah.
Would it be wow, absolutely, but not something that, probably not the one thing that we need to put our money on right now.
And it's those kind of conversations that are really keeping everybody's feet on the ground.
Yes,
This
sir.
is real. It's huge by itself.
Yes,
And then these things, but you're also, I'm assuming you're open for ideas of having a sponsor where Clay Cooper Bridge.
absolutely.
Wait, she said 3 million.
3 to 4.
Yeah, I'm out.
Jump in.
I mean, if it was just 2, he was in, like, all the way.
Jeremy, this got brought up at the last thing. I think it's important to remember that, the CID is an ongoing thing for, I think they said 50 years, so there may be opportunities, to, and then maybe there's a chance where sort of a different project could kind of come in and coincide. One of the things that we've been talking about is a trail system that connects all the Branson trails, and there's a part where that would have to be traversed over Highway 76, right? Actually, where Fritz's is at, So there were some public-private partnerships there where that could, so I think those conversations can continue, but it's important kind of to ground ourselves where we're at this point as
Sure.
well. So.
In this particular, in segment 1 and 2, we had one really, really good place where we could do this, and it was near the Ferris wheel, to be honest with you. There's already a lot of very visual, lots of really great activity right there. So that may not have been the place where we would necessarily want that, that overpass or that overlook. But you're right, as we move forward, looking at some of the other segments, in fact, we may need to explore boardwalk as opposed to concrete sidewalk as the grades fall off in some places. Now, we don't get real carried away with looking at the analysis, but we have looked ahead just a hair because we knew that we would need to tie back with anything that we suggest. We would need to be able to tie it back to whatever it is we land on here. And so we did sort of project ahead, and you're right, there probably are other opportunities. Good.
Gail, I appreciate you updating the board. I would encourage you to, on a fairly regular basis, just keep the board up to speed of where you're going, and you'll have board support. If there's no other questions, we're going to call it a day.
Thank you guys so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
That is the only agenda item, correct, Lisa? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Sheila, you're